You're welcome. You're welcome. All right, so guys, I've seen all three organizations. So for the people who may not know, Rob is from DRSA, Ernst van Sale from Afriform, and Marsrud from IRR. All three of these organizations are busy in the fight to end the state of disaster. All three of you have somewhat different campaigns, but all aimed at the same thing, right? You're taking different angles. I thought, what a great opportunity to maybe discuss with each of you the way you guys intend on fighting this. But I also have an important question to ask you once we've established that. So we'll start with Rob. Perhaps you can briefly tell us how DRSA has started the fight to end the state of disaster.
Thanks, Joe, and thanks for having me on. And hi, other guys. It's good to see you again. Lovely. I think we've taken a slightly different approach, and it's maybe an extension of what we were doing some time ago. We've been involved in quite a few challenges against the lockdown and various regulations, and this is just an extension of that. We approached it at the end of 2019 with a challenge to prevent an extension of the state of disaster, or using the Disaster Management Act. And yeah, we had to reconsider it after some serious discussions with various legal teams, and a few financial issues that were raised internally, and so on. And as we sort of filed our papers in 2019, the was it 2019 or 2020? Sorry, 2020.
2020.
The Yeah, 2020. The state up their testing, and suddenly the figures went through the roof. And really, it was obviously a deliberate ploy to attack the challenge from a sideline. But here we are again. Situation has changed. The environment is completely different, and pretty much in our favor this time. I think public perception has completely shifted. People are now questioning things a lot more. There are a lot more facts on the table, and it's clear that the need for a state of disaster under the DMA is no longer applicable, and especially because so many regulations have been withdrawn, which pretty much makes it obsolete. All it's doing is keeping government in power, keeping power with a handful of people, and one minister in particular, which really doesn't go down well with society. So the danger lies with the state having far too much power, and able to enact ridiculous things at any time that they feel fit. There's clearly no science behind their decisions, and I think that's where we're coming from this time. We're going to challenge it all the way, even if government does end the state of disaster. We will still carry on and try and set a legal precedent there, because we know for a fact that the regulations will just be shifted towards the health under the Health Act, which will make it a lot more difficult to challenge. So we need a legal precedent before that happens.
Fantastic. All right. So before I ask you some questions about that, and for those of you that are also listening, I see a lot of comments coming in that they watched Conscious Clerical and then they jumped over to here. So thank you, Conscious Clerical, for telling people to join on this stream. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Hit the subscribe, or at least hit the like. So Marius, I'll come to you, man. IRR, how are they? What's their angle? What are they doing? How far are you? Yeah.
Well, we've got our legal team to write letters to the president and Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, and give their reasons, scientific reasons, for why there is still a lockdown, especially around the possibility of people being detained if they are found to be positive or infected with COVID. They won't have there might be a possibility they can be detained by the government, rather than being allowed to isolate at home, whatever the case is. And also the issue of not allowing gatherings at sports stadiums, whether it's cricket or rugby or soccer, or whatever the case is. We saw, at malls and so on, malls have been packed. And we also saw during the election campaigns last year, and this was from all the political parties actually, they had, there was no social distancing and what have you. And whenever you think of social distancing, people like, or parties like the ANC, which is the governing party, which is giving us these regulations was flouting them. We saw pictures of President Ramaphosa at rallies where there were, loads of people, nobody wearing masks, nobody social distancing, which we can maybe agree that silly things, don't stop you getting COVID. But if those are the regulations the government itself has said we need to follow, then the governing party should probably be following those regulations. We've also seen at funerals where, especially of ANC stalwarts, where people didn't follow regulations. So it makes no sense we have these, especially in a sports stadium where you are outside. You can perhaps, now there's a limit of about 2,000 people allowed in stadiums, which can hold 30,000 people. It makes no sense, and it's been scientifically proven. It is just about impossible to catch COVID and actually any kind of respiratory virus when you're outside. So it makes no sense to not allow people to go to watch cricket or rugby or soccer or whatever the case might be. So, we're writing to the president and of course, we already have. We're asking them for scientific reasons why we still have these various regulations. This is all part of our campaign to have the National Coronavirus Command Council disbanded. It's obviously a very undemocratic body. It's been basically governing the country for 2 years with no oversight whatsoever. And also the difference between the state of disaster and a state of emergency is also quite important here. A state of disaster does not need Parliament's say so to keep it extended, where a state of emergency has to. And if I recall correctly, after 3 months, a state of emergency needs a 60% majority in Parliament to get extended again. With the state of disaster, there's been no parliamentary oversight whatsoever. The National Coronavirus Command Council has been, giving us these silly regulations which has destroyed people's lives. We've also seen people have been killed. We all know what happened to Collins Khoza, Petrus Michels, and not one person has been punished for that or brought to book for that. In other countries, we would have seen people have been thrown into jail, might even have brought governments down in other countries. Yeah, in South Africa, people just shrug their shoulders. Yeah, poor Collins Khoza, and nothing happens. Nobody gets held to account for that. But anyway, so this is all part of our broader campaign to have the National Coronavirus Command Council disbanded. And I think we are making progress. If you see what Joe Pachla, the Minister of Health, said a little while ago, he acknowledged that it was there has been a lot of pressure from civil society bodies, including the three that we represent here, the three of us, and other bodies, to have these regulations pushed back against. And I think, if it hadn't been for the work of the South Africa Afriform, the Institute of Race Relations, and others, I think we'd probably be sitting looking at a state of disaster that could be carrying on into perpetuity. And also, I don't know if there would have been a municipal government election last year if it hadn't been pressure from civil society bodies. I think we could have had an unconstitutional extension of the terms of municipal councils, which would have been a very bad outcome for South African democracy.
Absolutely. Thank you, by the way, Marius and IRR, for the work you guys are doing in DRSA and Afriform. Speaking of which, ladies and gentlemen, please, while you're here, if you don't know who these people are, which I highly doubt you don't, but if you don't, please check out the description below. I've linked their Twitter, I've linked their websites to their organizations, I've linked Conscious Caracal's YouTube channel, DRSA's website, IRR's website, which we'll talk a bit about another campaign from the IRR in just a moment. But Ernst, welcome back. It's good to see you again. Thanks again for the punt. And yeah, how is Afriform? What's their angle in the pursuit to end the state of disaster?
Well, Joe, yeah, I'm glad to be back. Always nice to chat to you about these issues. I just wanted to say I wanted to get as many. I just stopped streaming just before this episode. I wanted to get as many people over here as possible because I actually had a record amount of people watching. I was doing analysis of the Julius Malema court case. But yeah, when I make an obligation to someone to come on their show, I keep to it. So they have to come listen to me on your platform rather than my own. When it comes to Afriforum and Solidarity stance on the state of disaster, it's pretty simple. It's not really complicated stuff. It's that, well, firstly, there is currently no disaster. There hence doesn't need to be a state of disaster. If I had to make an argument that there's a state of disaster, I would say the ANC still being in power in South Africa is a state of disaster for the country. When you look at the unemployment records that they're breaking, infrastructure falling apart, record unrest, the list goes on. That would definitely be maybe a disaster. But when it comes to COVID related stuff, there's no disaster. There's nothing warranting a state of disaster at all. So just maybe for some context, I'm glad that Rob is here as well, because he was his organization Dear SA actually did a joint opposition to the state of disaster with Afriform, and we're very appreciative of him for lending their massive support that they also have behind them. So just for some context, some little bit of some legalese. Afriforum and Solidarity also, we served our Solidarity as our the labor union, our sister organization, and we served our core documents in the North Gauteng High Court in Pretoria, in which we requested the court to declare the continuation of the current state of disaster invalid. So we'll see now. The ANC has promised that this is the last time. This is the last time we're going to be extending it. I don't think they can afford to keep extending it. I think the damage is really building up, and their goodwill is completely exhausted, the little bit that they have left. But there is a disturbing trend that led up to this point, and that's the continued extension of the state of disaster. I think that's something that really needs to be focused on, is the fact that the ANC just kept extending it, and the state of disaster needs to end, because if it doesn't, it's within that legal framework where they can just snap their fingers and say, well, now religious gatherings are banned. Now beaches, you can't go to beaches anymore. Fried chicken or cooked chicken, no, you can't go buy cooked chicken at this time. Sandals, stop what you're doing. No more sandals, please. That's what the ANC can do under the state of disaster. That's how it goes. That's how it works. So that's why it's integral to get it ceased and to stop this piece of legislation. But then at the same time, I also think the timing now is perfect, seeing as if you're taking on, I think my, I want to say bondgenote in Afrikaans, my allies here in this conversation on the panel would agree. A lot of people would have said, well, why didn't you take on the state of disaster exactly when it started? And I'm like, well, when you're taking on a massive piece of draconian legislation like this, it's like hunting a buffalo with spears. You don't just throw one spear and it's through the heart and you got it. You chip away at it and you make it tired. I mean, there were other organizations that tried to take it on at the beginning, and it didn't work. And I mean, that set the precedent where we realized this is going to be a much bigger fight. And when we talked to our legal team, they said the time is ripe now. This piece of draconian legislation has been weakened to the point where we can actually strike a fatal blow now. So that's pretty much the explanation for the timing. And I think the end is nigh.
Fantastic, man. Some shots fired, by the way. I see some people commenting that during your little rant there. But yeah, I agree 100%. And just see, I got somewhat of a interesting question here. Are Crocs sandals?
I don't know what Crocs are. I don't know what they are classified as. They're classified as an abomination.
Okay, so guys,